Hi, welcome to the Vue.js 0 to 60 tutorial, where we go through a brief description on what Vue.js is, what's different about it, why you should learn it, and then implement a project that uses most of the features of Vue that you'll need most of the time, aka the essentials. Now, what is Vue? Vue is a front-end JavaScript framework for creating component-based single-page applications. Like the other major players, Angular and React, we can use Vue to write interactive components, each with their data, logic, and markup, and link them together to create full web applications. Multiple components make up a page, and components can be nested within each other for more modularity and separation of concerns. They can communicate data up and down the component hierarchy, either locally using props and events, or globally using an application-wide state. Components can also share logic stored in dedicated files known as services. Considering that most Vue developers are people that migrate from Angular and React, I'll assume you have some knowledge on what a front-end framework is, so I'll focus on what makes Vue stand out from the others. Vue is considered to be a framework. Straight out of the box, it has more features than something like React. Not to diss React in any way, it's actually my favorite out of the three, but I think with official complementary libraries like Vue Router for routing, Vuex for state management, and the Vue CLI, it provides a better ecosystem, especially for beginners. Although it has less tools than Angular, but that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, it depends on the type of project that you're working on, Angular is more suited to complete bigger applications. Vue has the easiest learning curve out of the three. Unlike Angular, which is a great framework but has terrible documentation in my opinion, Vue actually has amazing documentation, explaining all of its features with examples that are simple and easy to understand and apply. And it provides great template syntax that allows you to use your existing HTML and CSS skills while giving you access to great directives that let you write your markup in a really expressive and concise manner. What I think makes Vue shine is the simplicity of it. It's fairly easy to learn. You don't have to learn many new things, like TypeScript in Angular or JSX in React, although you can use JSX in Vue if you wanted, provided you add the Babel plugin that compiles it. Vue has brilliant DevTools, by far better than Angular Augury or React DevTools. It even shows information about Vuex in the same extension tab, whereas for React and Redux you have to use two separate extensions for them. The Vue CLI lets you pick and choose the features you want to use in your project before creating it, and it allows you to create certain presets for your projects if you wanted to. To create Vue apps, you need to install the Vue CLI, using either npm or yarn. I'll repeat what I said in the Angular tutorial, that you need solid JavaScript knowledge. You have to understand how to use fundamental language features like data structures, loops and conditional expressions, async features like callbacks and promises, higher order functions like map, filter and sort, and be comfortable writing JavaScript in general. Seriously, if you're not yet familiar using JavaScript, then do not learn a JavaScript framework yet. However, if you feel that your JavaScript is decent, then this tutorial is for you. Alright, enough of the theory and let's jump to the code. Alright, I just wanted to mention quickly that for this tutorial we're going to be using this API that I created a while ago as part of the AWS Lambda and DynamoDB tutorial that I made on this channel. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that. If not, you can just follow along. I'll post as well the base URL of the API that you can use it along. It's a simple CRUD API, so as you can see, if I send a GET request to this URL and to /posts, it gets me a list of posts sorted by created at, and if I send a post request to the /post route and just say, I don't know, just some gibberish and hit send, will actually persist this post on the database, and then I can take this ID as well and send a put request to the /post / the ID of that post and edit it, and let's say edited here and say edit it here, and I'll send, and it will actually edit that post. There's a problem here. It's because of the white space. Yeah, it will actually edit that post and then give me back that post. You can actually, we can as well delete, and we can do /post / any number, and you will limit the number of posts by that number. So we did 4 now, we got 4. Alright, so it's identical to the JSON placeholder API, except in this one the data actually persists, and in the JSON placeholder it doesn't. You can use that as well if you want. Alright, so here on my desktop, I would usually use the git bash tool, but because of the interactive mode, it doesn't work. So I'm just going to use a traditional command line. I'm going to cd into my desktop, and here make sure you have the Vue CLI installed. You can check by running vue -- version like this, and I have 3.5 installed, so I have it installed. And now I can do Vue create, and let's call this Vue-starter. And now the CLI tool is gonna ask me to choose a preset. Usually I would go with the default, but I just want to show you the other option. So you can manually select features. I would usually pick the CSS preprocessors because I prefer using Sass. And I would maybe put the router, but I want to show you how to set it up yourself and not have it boilerplated. I'm just going to press enter here. You can press space if you want to select any of these features. I'm just going to press enter for now. I'm going to select this ESLint error prevention and say lint on save. And here asks you where you want this Babel configuration and the other config to go. I want it to go in dedicated files because otherwise it's going to make the package.json bloated. Here it's going to ask me if I want to save this preset. I'm going to say no. And now it's going to actually install the packages and create a boilerplate for our project. This is going to take a while, so I'll be back once it's done. Alright, now that it's done installing, we can cd into it. So let's say cd Vue starter. And here I'll open it using VS Code. So just run code dot. Let me close this window. So this is our project. So we get a couple of config files and we get a package.json file. And here we have a couple of scripts. Our main one that we'll be using is the serve to just serve it. And then later we'll use build to build it out. And here we have our dependencies, or the Vue, and our couple of dev dependencies, nothing fancy. So if you open up the source folder, right here we have our main.js. So here we're importing Vue, and then we are initializing a new Vue instance and telling it to mount our app instead of the div with the ID app. So if you go to the public folder, to the index.html, this is where our app will go. This div right here will be replaced by our application. So here I'll just change the title, just showing you can change the title here. Let's say Vue tutorial. And here let's go back to the source, and inside the source let's go to the app.vue file. I'll save this. And all the Vue components are .vue files. And you can, in VS Code, you can install this extension called vtor, right, this one. And it will properly highlight your syntax, your .vue syntax, so that you can, actually write these files. Otherwise, they will be all in one color. So here, this is our main app. Right here, you can see we have a div, and inside of here, we're using another component called Hello World that comes already created, which is right here in the components folder. And we can use components by just importing them and adding them to this components object. And then here, just using that tag, that selector tag. And every Vue component has a template tag. This is where our markup goes, our HTML markup. And we have a script tag where our logic goes, our JavaScript logic. And we optionally have a style tag to style this component. This can be global and it can be local as well. If you add the scoped directive to it, it will only apply to this component. Alright, let's change a couple of things. I'm actually going to delete this hello world. And let's delete all of this right here. I'll just put a header 2 for now saying app. I'm going to remove this import because this file no longer exists. And I'm going to remove this components object and remove this styling. And let's actually start our app. I'll open the command line terminal and say npm run serve. Alright, now that it's compiled and running, we can control click on here, and it's serving on localhost 8080. So this is our app. It just says app right now, nothing much. Let's actually install Materialize. For this, I'm going to use Materialize, and you can later use something like Vuetify, but for now, I just want to use the CSS library to implement Google Material Design styling. So we can go to Get Started on the materializecss.com page, and here I'll just grab this command. Copy it, and let's go to the terminal. I'm going to open a different window and paste that command. And on top of Materialize, I want to install the Vue router right now, so we can set up some routes. Vue router. And I'm gonna create two components, two pages, the about page and the home page. The about page is just created just for me to demonstrate to you how the router works. So I'm gonna create them while the router is being installed. Here we create a folder. I'll call this views, because this is a convention in Vue that your pages will go into the views folder and your components that make up your page will go to the components folder. So here in the views folder, I'll create a new file, new file. I'll call this home.view like this. I'm going to create another one, not a folder, a file. Call this about.view. And here in the components, I'm going to create two new files. One is navbar.view, and the other one we'll use later. I'll call this postform.view. Alright, I'll close everything. And let's actually go to the documentation, go to components. I want to put a navbar on top of our page. So here, let's go to navbar and just grab this nav tag right here. Let's go back to our project. And here in the navbar.view, we need to say template, press tab, and inside of the template, we paste this. So this is now our component. We don't need to have a script or a style. And here, this is our navbar. I'm going to change the logo title to Vue tutorial. And here I'll remove one of these links and leave just two. One will say home and one will say about. And for now, I'm going to leave these hrefs as hash, but when we implement the router, these are actually going to go somewhere. So let's actually use this component. So here in the app, let's import it first. So in the script, I'm going to say import navbar from the same level, components / navbar. I'm actually going to close the terminal window. And here inside of our export tag here, inside our script, we need to actually add again that components object. And inside of that object, we give it all the components that we want to use. And for now, it's just going to be the navbar. One thing I forgot to import materialize CSS, so let's do that. So here in our app, you can as well import it in the index.html, but I prefer doing it in the app view file. All right, so here we'll say import, and we go back one level. And we go to node_modules / materialize-css /dist /css /materialize just materialize.min.css. I'm going to copy all of this and paste it one more time. And now we need the JavaScript. So here we'll say JavaScript. And here we'll say materialize.js. .min.js. Alright, so let's save everything and make sure there's no errors. There isn't. Let's go to our app right here. Let's refresh it. For some reason, the navbar is not working. Alright, there's no errors, but oh, I forgot to actually put it in the template. So here we'll say navbar like this, self-closing tag. Actually, everything needs to be under one component in the template, so I'll just wrap everything in a div. And here I'll say navbar and that header to app. And we can see we have our navbar. It has two links, but these links don't go anywhere yet. And we have our app header. Actually, I want these buttons to come a bit inside, like closer to the middle. So here in the navbar view, I'm going to wrap everything inside of here in a container. So let's say div, the class of container, which is a materialize class. So here, so it's up to here, all of this UL, actually not the UL, this whole, yeah, actually until here. I confused myself for a second. So here we close that div, we save, it formats. And if we go back to our app, there we go, we get our buttons pushed a bit in. All right, let's go back to the app view. Let's set up our router so that we can go to our about and home pages. So we can actually put all of the code of the router here, but maybe you'll have a lot of routes, so it's better to separate it into its own file. So here in the source folder, I'm going to create a new file, call it router.js. And here I'll import a couple of things. So here we'll import Vue from Vue, and I'll import router from, you can name it anything, is the default export from Vue underscore dash router. And here we need to import our views, our pages. So we'll say import, actually not from, import about from views slash about dot view. Remember to add the dot view to every component you import, because they're not JavaScript files unlike React. So here we'll say, I typed React, import home from views slash home dot view. Now we need to set up our routes, but first we need to tell Vue to use the router. So we need to say vue.use, and this you use to tell Vue to use any of the plugins that you want. So here our plugin is the actual router, so we'll just say this. And here we need to export our router. We'll say export default new router, and this takes a couple of options. And here we'll say mode, and we'll give it a value of history, because otherwise the default is the hash mode, which adds a hash to the URL. I don't like that. We'll put mode history. And here we need to set up our routes. So let's say routes, and it's going to be an array, and it's going to have objects. For each one we'll have a path. So this is going to be the home page, so I'm just going to say slash, and we need a component, and this will be the home component. And we can have like name and some other properties, but these are the essential ones. Let's create another one for the about. So we'll say path is slash about, and component is about. Let's save our file. For the router to work, we need to add it here in the main.js in this instantiation call, and we need to import it. So let's say import router from the same level router, like this. And here we need to pass it to this new Vue call as the first argument, and so router and put comma. So now the router is actually implemented, but we need to as well go to the app view. And here, instead of this app header, actually I'm going to wrap everything in a container. So dot container tab, and here we need to put the router view component, or like selector. So this will tell Vue that this is where we want our markup from the router to go. So these are our pages will go here. Let's put some content in our pages so that we can tell the difference between them. So here we'll say template, and here for now I'm just gonna say header 3 of home page. I'm gonna copy this and go to the about page and just say about page. All right, let's save everything and let's go to our app. All right, so now we have home in the slash, type slash, we're still at home. We have a container, everything is pushed to the middle. If we click about, it doesn't go to the about page. Oh, I know why, actually. Oh, silly me. Yeah, in the navbar, these are still like normal anchor tags. We need to replace these with router links. So here, instead of the A tag here, let's Control D, so you select both the A tags and replace this with router dash link. And here, instead of href, it's going to be a property called attribute called to. This is going to be to slash. And here, do the same. Replace the anchor tag. Actually, just this. No, select this and this. And here, let's say router link. Instead of href to hash, we will go to slash about. We need to replace this as well. So this will be a router link. And this will have a to attribute to slash, and change this as well to router link. All right, let's save. Let's go to our app, and now it will work. So if I go to about, it goes to slash about, and we see the about page and the home as well. And this as well is the home page. All right, cool. Now we're done with the navbar, so we can close this. And we're actually not gonna do anything here as well in the main and the router, so we can close these. And now let's actually start working on our home page, and let's start to fetch the data from our backend and show all the posts on our home page. For this, I'm actually going to install Axios. We don't have to, we can use fetch, but I prefer using Axios because it removes on get requests and on actually all requests, it removes that step of having to call res.json, and it has some extra features that will be more in handy in bigger applications. Alright, so now that we have Axios installed, here in the home, I'm going to remove this header. I'm going to put a row, so let's say .row, and here I want to show all the posts, but first we need to fetch them. So we could actually, in our script here, we can fetch them here, but since we're going to need this logic shared between components, potentially, so we could abstract all of the data manipulation in one file and make it into a service. So here in the source folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this post service.js. And like in the Angular tutorial, we put everything in the service. We'll do the same here. So we'll put here we need to import Axios, so import Axios, Axios from Axios, and here we need to put our base URL constant, so it will say const base or API base URL. This is in the description. I'm gonna grab this from the side and paste it here. All right. So here we'll say export default, and this is going to be a class, and we'll call this post service. And here we'll have our methods, or here we'll have the first method will be get in all posts. Let's call this get all posts, and it won't take anything, and it will return axios.get. And here we'll pass it the base URL, so API. Actually, we need to concatenate on it, so let's do backticks and put $ curly braces and say API base URL / posts, like this. So this will return the Axios promise of getting API base URL / posts, so that we can get it from the home page. We can access that and then show the data. So here in the home view file, I'll create a script tag, and inside of here in the default export, let's give this a name and let's say home. And here inside of the script tag, I'll say import. We'll import that service, so import post service from, go back one level to post service, like this. And we need to, since this is a class, we need to instantiate an instance of it. So we'll say const post service, camel case like this with a lowercase p. And we'll say equals new post service, like this, call it, so that we can create an instance, we can use that. And now let's actually start to create, to bring our data. So here inside of our component, we'll add another property called data, like this as a data like this as a function. And data, think of it as the state. Like if you come from React, this is basically our component state. This is where we put all our data for this component. So here we'll have an array of posts. So we'll say posts, and this will be initially an empty array, and we'll populate it with our data. So we need to populate this posts array once our component is created. So for this, we'll use a lifecycle method called created. So we'll call created like this as a function. You can do like this as a property and then say function, but the shorthand syntax, which is more useful, to just call it like this, like a function. And inside of here we need, and by the way, this is a lifecycle. There's 4 main methods. If you go to the Vue documentation, there's a cool graph or diagram showing you how these methods work. There is first there's the created, and then there's mounted, and there's updated once the component is updated, and then there's destroyed once it's destroyed, and there is the ones that are in between them. If you come from React, this is kind of similar to, well, not kind of, actually exactly the same as component did mount, component did update, and component will mount, etc. So in the created, now we need to reach out to our service and actually get our data. So here we'll actually use this instance, this post service instance, and say post service dot, and we need to call this method get all posts that we created, and this returns a promise, so we need to chain dot then. And here when we get our result, we need to, actually don't need a block, we just need one call, and we need to say this dot posts. Actually, let's put it in a block that we can do other stuff. So we'll say this dot posts, and now because this post is in this class, any of these data properties here, we refer to them with this dot, and then we put the name of that so we can access it. And unlike React, you don't need to call a this dot state, that's this dot set state or something. You can mutate them directly, and that will be done in the behind the scenes, which is quite neat. I find that it reduces the amount of code that we have to write. So here we'll say this dot posts equals, because of this is Axios, our data is stored in a object called data that's inside of the response. So we'll say this dot post equals response dot data, and here I want to console our posts just to make sure that we actually got them. So let's say console dot log, actually not post, this dot post, this dot posts, like this. And of course this can fail, so we'll need to say dot catch error, and if we have an error we need to console dot error that error. All right, let's save everything. Let's make sure it compiles successfully. Let's go to it. Should I open another one? So here, there's an error. Data function should return an object. Yeah, okay, yeah. Inside of the data here, we need to return an object. So let me cut this. We need to say return. Yeah, so inside of this object, we say post like this. Yeah, this should fix it. All right, we have another error. No, we don't actually. So we have our data right here. Oops, my voice is cracking. All right, so we have our data. This is the latest post that we added earlier, the edited one. And we have all the other posts. Cool, so we're actually getting our data successfully. Let's now actually show it in the markup. Let me actually close this terminal window, it's taking unnecessary space. So here inside of this row, I'm gonna say create another div. So dot call, which is column dot s6, which means it will take half of the screen width. So here in here, what I want to put is for each post, I want to put a card with all the data that relates to that post. So here we'll say dot card like this. But we need to tell Vue that we want to iterate through our posts array, and for each one we need to show this card. So inside of this div right here, we not inside the div, inside of the attributes of the div, we need to put this directive called v4 colon, and then actually not colon, equals, and now we give it the expression that tells it to loop in whatever array we want it to loop through. So here we want it to loop in posts, and here actually we can access. So we do parentheses and say post, and I want the index as well because we need it like this, and say in posts. And now it knows that this posts is this posts right here, and it's given us a red squiggly because we need to give it a key, a unique key, just like if you worked with React, each element in an iterator needs a unique key. So here actually we need to bind another property. So here we'll use another directive called vbind, and this is what you use to bind any value from the component to some data in the markup, or to pass it as a prop to a component. So here I say vbind colon, say item equals, and I want to bind it to the post so that it knows what the item of this div is. And here we want to bind another property. And by the way, there's a shorthand notation for vbind is just colon like this. So let's say colon index right here, the property of index, and I'm gonna give it the index. This is why I got it from here. So we'll just say index like this, and now we need to bind the key. So we'll say colon key equals, it will be post.id, because I know we have IDs for each post and they are unique, so we can use that. All right, so now for each post in our post, it's gonna create this. Of course, we need to put more stuff here. So inside of the card, we need to put a card hash content, not hash dash. And this is, by the way, this is materialized stuff. And here I want to put the title first, I'm gonna call it's gonna be a paragraph. So paragraph with a class card title, and inside of here now we want to access the title property inside of post and put it here. And for this we're gonna use a string interpolation, kind of like Angular if you've used it. This is what I like about React, actually, about Vue rather. It's got some really cool features from Angular and really cool features from React, and it merges both of them. So here we'll say post.title. And this is a string interpolation, but as well, you can have like JavaScript expressions here. You can have anything. You can put, if I do like this, for example, I don't know, to uppercase, and it will actually turn it into uppercase. So you can write JavaScript inside of here, but it's better to write it inside of the script tag. All right, so let's put the created at date. So here I'm going to say p.timestamp, because I know I'm going to style this later. And here I'll put post.created at, like this. And let's put the body of the post. So here we'll have a normal paragraph. And here we'll put a string interpolation, so double curly braces. And we say post.body like this. And after the content, I want to add another section, .card action. And here I'll put two buttons, one to edit the post and one to delete the post. Of course, they're not going to do anything right now, but we'll just put them as dummy buttons for now. So here, this link will go nowhere. We're just going to have a hash for an href. And here, we'll have it say edit. I'm going to copy this and here put it and have it say delete. That's I'm going to give this a class because I want to make this red, class of delete btn like this. And let's go down to the script tag and style this delete button, the style tag, which we don't have. So let's say style, and let's add here scoped because we don't need these styles outside, and we can just scope them to this component. And here I'll say delete dash button, and for that I'm gonna give it a color of red and save everything. And let's go to our app. And there we go. So we get our data, we get all our posts. Each of them has its own card, and we have these, the title, the created at, and the body of the post. But this button is not red actually. So let me inspect it. That's not applying because we need to be more specific. So a card action. But actually, I don't want to style the other one red as well. But actually, I'm just going to say important for now. Important. Let's save. Let's go back. Yeah, it's red now. Actually, I wanna put this date closer to the title and put this body a bit further away and make this date gray so that it doesn't attract too much attention. So here inside of the style, what is it? It's card title. So here I'll say .card content .card title, and I'm gonna give this a margin bottom of 0, and here I'm gonna just copy this, and here instead of card title I'm gonna have the paragraph.timestamp, and this will have a color of a gray color #999 and a margin bottom of say 10 pixels. Let's save. Let's go back. Cool, this looks much better. Alright, let's go back to our app. Let's now add a form for adding posts. So here at the top of our template, here let's create another row. So dot row, and inside of here I'll put, oh actually everything here needs to be wrapped in one component. So I'll put div, I'll copy the closing tag, and underneath here we'll put it like that. So now it's not complaining anymore. So inside of this row I'm gonna put a call S6 like this, and here this is where our form goes. So I can just put a comment and say form. We could actually put our form here, but it's better to put it in its own component, so we'll have two smaller components instead of one big one. But yeah, of course we already created that component, I forgot. So here I'll say post form like this and close the tag, and let's import that component. So here we need to say import post form from, we go back one level and we go into components and we get post form. All right, and we need to as well declare it in the components array here. So we need to say, or components object here, inside of that object we need to say post form, and actually here we need to say .view, forgot that. All right, we need to put a comma here, and now let's go to that post form and actually create this form. So here we'll say template, and by the way, using Vitor or whatever, we can say scaffold and it will create all of this, which is cool. So inside the template we need our form, so we'll say form, and this will not have an action, but the way I want it to be is that I want to have later a boolean variable of loading, and if it's not loading it will show the form, and if it's loading I want it to show like later a loading spinner. So I'll give this a directive called v-if, and this takes a condition, and if this condition is true it will render this component. If it's not, or not component, I mean this element, if it's not going to render it. And there's a different component, there's a different directive called vshow, which is different, which is gonna, if it's false it's gonna have it, but with a display of false. So we're gonna use v-if, and we'll say if not loading, which we haven't created yet, but we will. I'm gonna give this a class of form to style it later, and here we want to give it the submit event. So here we'll say we'll use another directive called v-on, and this will take an event. So the event will be the submit event, and we need to give it actually what the method will execute on when this event happens, and we'll call this on submit, and we'll create this in a bit. And here we'll say we'll put our first input, so dot input field, and again this is materialized CSS classes. Here we'll have two inputs, one for the title of the post and one for the body. So here we'll have a label for title, and you will say title like this, and we'll have an input, and this will be of type text, and we're gonna have a couple of things here. So I'm gonna indent like this, and here what I want to do is I want to give it a name, call it title, and now we want to bind this input to a value in our component, in our state. And to do this we need to say v model directive, and this is a two-way binding. So if the input changes, the variable inside of our component changes, and if that variable value changes, the input value as well changes. So it's a two-way binding. So here we'll say title, this is our v model, and we need to give this a class of validate, so that we will have a helper text underneath it, and if there's an error or there's a valid state, it will show that helper text. So here we'll say span with the class of helper dash text, and here we'll have a property called data error, or attribute data error, and this is in case we have an error, this will show in red, and it will show the text that's written inside of this attribute. So for the title, our error text will say title must not be empty, because that's what we're handling, it being empty. So let's close this tag, so span, and so this by default will not show unless this input has the class of invalid, and we'll do the validation ourselves. So here I'll copy this whole div, this input field, and paste it, and we'll have here the body. So body label is for the body, the name, the text on the label will say body, the type is text, the name is body, the v model as well is body, and the error here will say body must not be empty. And here we need to add the submit button. So here we'll have a button with the type of submit like this, press tab, and here we need to give it a couple of classes to have styling. I'm going to give it the waves effect class, and waves light, and btn, and here it will say add. Alright, so that's our markup. Now let's go to our script. Here we'll give this a name, so name, and the value will be post form. And here we need our data, so data is a function like this, and we say return, and we return this object. So what do we have? We have the loading, we have, and our two models, title and body. So loading, which by default will be false, and we'll have our title, which by default initially will be an empty string, and the body initially will be an empty string as well. Now let's actually handle the submission, or actually let's see what our form looks like first, and then see from there. Right, there's no errors, saved all files. Let's go to our app. Yeah, all right, so our form looks cool. I want to actually give it some margin so that it's pressed a bit to the middle. So here, let's go to our file. Here in the style, we'll say .form, and we give it a margin 50 pixels. Let's save. All right, it looks better like this. Let's open up the dev tools, make sure that there's no errors. Actually, there is. Yeah, it just complains that we don't have the onSubmit method because we actually don't yet. So let's create it. Inside of our components, our custom methods are kept inside of one object called methods. So we say methods like this, and now here we can put all the methods that we want for our component. Of course, now we need to create the onSubmit method. And here we can pass it an event, and we can say event.prevent default so that the page doesn't reload. But we can also use these things called modifiers. So right here on submit, we can say dot and chain modifiers, which do certain things on each event. And one modifier for the submit event is the prevent, which by default runs event.prevent default without us having to type that in our code. And by the way, shorthand notation for v-on would be the @ so this @ submit, and this will work as well, and it gives you some cool intelligence on what events that you can use if you press Control space. All right, so let's go here in our onSubmit. Now let's handle the submission, and here we'll say first thing this.loading equals true, because now we're going to communicate to our server. And let's not worry about validation for now. Let's try to send this post to our server. But first we need to actually create that method in the post service. So here in the post service, I'm going to create a method called writePost, which will actually handle both the post and the put requests. We'll take a post, and here it will say if post.id. So the way this writePost, I put it to work, is that we send it a post, and if the post has an ID, that means we are editing this post because this post already exists and has an ID. But if it doesn't, that means this is a new post. So I actually use the post method add /post and create a new post. So here, if it has an ID, we're actually editing a post. So we want to say return axios dot put, and this will be to, so we do backticks. We need to put our API base URL. Well, actually, instead of putting it all the time, we could what can we do? Actually, what we can do is we can say here, we can say axios dot defaults like this dot base URL equals, and we give it this URL. And each time we do an Axios request, we send an HTTP request through Axios, it's going to use this as the base URL. So here in the get, actually, we need to get rid of this. We no longer need that. We can just say to /posts. And this can be just a normal, doesn't have to be backticks. And here we'll say, so we remove that base URL. We don't need that. And we'll say it will be to /post/ and here we'll do a variable, and we'll say post.id. So this is a put request, so it needs a body, and the body will be the post itself. Else, if it doesn't have an ID, so we're creating a new post. So we'll say return axios.post, and this will be to /post, and you will have the post itself as the body of the request. Well, while we're here, let's actually create the other methods and not open this file again. Here I'll put another method called getPosts, which gets posts with a limit, so a number of posts. So here we'll say we need to pass it the number of posts, and here we'll say return. If you remember from the API, we need to send a request to /posts / a number. So axios.get backticks /posts / curly brace, and we put that number argument right here. And we have one more to create, which is the delete post, which will take an ID of a post and send a request to delete it. So we'll say return axios.delete, and this will be to so curly backticks /posts, not post actually, just post /post, and here we put a variable that ID. Alright, so we're done with the post service. We can save this and close it forever. And here in our submit, we need to reach this write post and send this post. And actually first we need to import the service. So here we'll say import post service from, we go back one level to post service, and we need to instantiate an instance of it. So we'll say const post service equals new post service like this. And here let's form our post. So we'll say const post equals, and this will be we'll have a title, which will be remember this V model binds the value of the input here to the data here in our state or in our data, and if it changes, this changes as well automatically. So we can just give the values of these once the form is submitted. So the title will be this.title, and the body will be this.body, body like this. And now we actually send our request. So I'll say post service dot write post, cool internal instance right there, and we pass it the post, and here we'll say dot then, because that returns an Axios promise. And then if we get a response, then let's get our post from that response. So we can just console log it for now. So let's console.log our res.data, and we need to say .catch as well in case there's an error somehow, and we'll say console.error. Alright, let's save, make sure we don't have any errors. We don't, cool. Alright, let's go to our app. Let's open the console. Okay, there are a couple of errors. Or let's refresh, maybe not. Yeah, they were from last time. Alright, so here we need to type, let's say, I don't know, new post from Vue, and Vue is really cool. Alright, let's click add. So the form goes away. Oh, it's because of the loading, that's why it goes away. Alright, so we get this from our server that a post is created. We get an ID and everything, but of course it's not added because we haven't added the logic to add it here. So let's refresh. There we go. When we refresh, we get the new data updated and we get our post. Let's fix that the form goes away. So here, once we get the data back, we need to set the loading to false. So we'll get our loading equals false, so that we get our form back. Let's go to our app, refresh, and let's put some gibberish, click add. Cool, it comes back, but it's still got the values. If we refresh, we get that gibberish with submitted. Cool, but we need to reset the form once it's submitted actually. And the way we can do that, we can just reset our data. So here we'll say this.body. So this.body equals an empty string again, and this.title equals an empty string. And when the form goes away, I want to put the loading, the loading thing. I don't know what you call it. Where is it? It's right. Yeah, the preloader. Yeah, this indeterminate. What is it? A progress bar, I guess. Yeah, so I'll just copy this, and Let's go to the bottom here. Under our form, we'll put that here. And instead of saying v-if, we can use another directive, v else if, and we'll pass it the loading. We can use v-if as well here, but v else if works with this one as well, so it doesn't trigger both of them, so it's better for performance. It's a tiny bit, but whatever. So if we're loading, we're gonna see this now, and our form should reset because we reset those values to an empty string. So let's go to our app. Let me close everything here. Let's reload, and if I send some gibberish again, we see that loading for a second, and the form is back, and the form is reset to no data. Cool. I want to style this actually, and by the way, we can open, and if you want to see that, because the loading is too fast, you want to see the loading bar and style it, we can go, where's the Vue developer tools? Okay, I don't have it installed on somehow. Okay, Vue dev tools. Need to install that. So add to Chrome. I thought I had it. Okay, I had to restart Chrome for the extension to actually work. So this is the dev tools, which is pretty cool. We see our component tree right here, so our app, and this is our home component, and we can see our data right here. So this is all our posts, and so if we dig deeper into the post form, we can see the loading. We can set this to true, so true, and we'll get that bar back. All right, so I want this bar to actually be centered in the middle a little bit, so I'll give it some margin. So let's go back to our post form, and here in the script, in the style, I'm going to target the progress class, so dot progress, and give it some margin. So I'll give it margin on the top and bottom of 100 and on left and right of 0. So let's save. Let's go back. There we go. So styled properly now. If we go to the dev tools again and put the loading again to true, we see that loading bar is in the middle. All right, cool. Let's now, what do we do now? Let's validate our form in case, because right now if we have empty fields and we hit send, it actually attempts to send even though there will be errors because there will be server validation errors. All right, let's go here. Instead of putting everything in the onSubmit, let's create a separate method for this. Inside of methods, I'm going to create another one called valid form, and here what I want to do, I'm going to say, actually I'm going to add another variable, state variable here called errors, and it's going to be an empty object for now. And here I'll say this dot errors equals an empty object. Here we'll say this. Now I know this looks weird that I'm doing this again, given an empty object value again, but this works is that, because the way this works is that if we lose an error, I want to reset it whenever we check again, so that we don't see an error even though a field is valid. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does work. All right, so here I'll check the fields. So first I'll check the title, and we need to chain.trim so that it removes the white spaces. So here I'll say if title.trim equals an empty string, then we need to add an error. So we'll say this dot, like this dot errors dot title equals, and we'll say title. Actually, I don't think the errors matter. Yeah, because it doesn't matter. I think because this will show instead of this. All right, to test, I'm just gonna say title here. So in here, I'm gonna say if this dot body dot trim equals an empty string, and so here we'll say this dot errors dot body equals. I'm just gonna say body for now. I don't think these texts matter. It's just the fact that they have a value matters. And here I want to say if object dot keys, and pass it this dot errors and chain dot length. So if the length of this array, or object rather, of the number of keys is bigger than 0, that means we have some errors. So we return false. That means our form is not valid. Else return true. Else, if we don't have any errors, that means the form is valid, so we return true. So here at the top of the onSubmit, what we need to say is, after the loading, we need to say if, and we can access this method again by saying this dot. So here we'll say if this dot valid form. So, and we call it like that as because it's a method. We'll say this dot loading equals false, and we'll say return. So it stops, it doesn't carry on. Else we continue. Or actually no, if this dot valid, or if not this dot valid form, because if it's valid we actually want to do the rest. If it's not valid, we stop loading and we return. That means none of this executes. Alright, so let's save and let's see. Okay, so the fields are empty. Click add. Alright, so we don't get the errors. The form doesn't submit, but we don't get the errors. Interesting. Well, actually, yeah, what am I saying? I need to give these, because the way it works, if I inspect this, so this input, if I change the class of the input to invalid, invalid, oh my god, invalid. Alright, so this will show now. Alright, so if I save, you see that span is now visible and you see that error that title must not be empty. Alright, so actually we need to change the class in case we have an error. So here in the class we can do some binding, and here for the class it's gonna be actually a bound property, so we add a colon in front of it, and here it's gonna be like an expression like this, so we put square brackets, and here we'll say errors dot title. So this is a ternary operator. So if this is the case, so question mark, so if we have errors dot title, then this should be invalid. This should have the class of invalid. Let me make this wrap around. Else, so colon, else if we don't have, then it should just have the class of validate. Alright, so let's copy this class and go here for the other input. Here for the body, so if we have errors.body, then we set it to invalid, else it's validate. Alright, let's save and let's go back. Let's refresh. And now if I submit, I should get errors for both of them. Alright, so submit. There we go, we get errors. So if I put some gibberish here and click add, there we go. So that error is gone, but we still need to put this. If I put some gibberish here as well, click add, it's added. But of course we're not adding it here, because if we have to refresh and see our data. Now we can as well call again get posts, but that's not efficient because that way we send 2 requests to our server. So what we need to do, we need to send this post using Vue and just add it manually in our front end. Alright, so let's go to our app here. So here, once it's submitted, we want to send an event that this, once it's successful, we want to send an event and communicate to the home page that you need to add this post to your posts array right here. So here we'll use an API method called, so we'll do this dot dollar sign, and we have access to a couple of methods and namespaces given by Vue, and we'll use the emit one, and this here we need to pass it the event name. So the event name, I'll call it post created, because remember that here we're in the .then block. That means the post has been created successfully, and now we need to pass some data, which is going to be the post. So now we need to go to our home component and we need to catch this event and handle it. So here we can catch it from anywhere, but it's more appropriate to put it in the form. So here we can say v on, but shorthand we can just say at. So at, and we need to give it the event, which was called post created. And now we need to tell it what to execute once this event is triggered or emitted. So here we'll say, we'll call it add post. And now let's create this add post. So right here we need to create a methods. Actually, I'm going to put it on top of here. So methods object. Let's put a comma here. Let's create this add post method. And it will take the post, because this is passed through calling the event. And here we'll just say this dot posts, and we want to add it to the end because this is a new post. So we will use the unshift method, the JavaScript unshift, and pass it this post. All right, let's save all files. And so now what's happening is that when we send a post and when we send it to our server and we get a successful response, we emit an event called post created with this post that we have formed here. And now in the home, we catch this event right here. And once that event occurs or is emitted, this add post is executed. And then this add post adds that post that was caught here to the posts array. All right, so now if we add some gibberish, new gibberish, is that how you spell gibberish? I don't know, just copy it here, add here, and there we go, it's actually added on our front end. And if we refresh, it's the same. That's the data that we got from our server. Actually, is it? Oh, actually I made a mistake. We need to send the post that we got back from the server because that contains the created ad. The one we have doesn't contain the created ad. So here, let's go back to our post form. So here what we emit is actually going to emit res.data. Or instead, let's put that in let's put a const post. We already have that. Anyway, let's just send res.data, remove this console log. Yeah, this should work properly now. Let's refresh. Send some gibberish again. There we go, we get the one from the server so that we get the created ad as well. All right, let's start to wire these buttons. So here for the right, where are the buttons? Actually, no, they're in home. So here for the buttons, for the edit, we'll say @click. So once this button is clicked, we need to trigger the, so we'll call it edit post, and we'll pass it this post. So remember, we have this post through the for directive. And here for the delete, we say @click. We will trigger delete post and we'll pass it post.id. So here in the methods, let's create those. So the edit post, which for now I'm just going to say console.log post. And here for the delete post, so ID, we need to reach out to our service and delete this post. So let's say post service dot delete post, and we pass it this ID, and this returns a promise. So we need to say then. We have no result, so we can just leave those that without an argument, and we just console.log post deleted. If I can type, here we say .catch. If you have an error, just console.error error like this. All right, let's save all of that and let's go back. Let's refresh, open up the console, and here if we press delete right here, it says post deleted. Oh, we need to remove it actually from the array, but if we refresh, that gibberish is deleted. So we can actually just delete all of these. Click on all, delete on all of them. And now they're actually all deleted. All right, but we need to actually manually remove them using Vue from here. So what we need to do here in the, where is it? The delete post, once they've been successfully deleted from the server, we need to change our post. So we need to say this.post equals this.posts.filter. And here the filter takes a, what do you call it? A callback. And this callback is, we leave only elements with this condition. And the condition will be post where post.id does not equal this ID. So we only leave the ones that don't have this ID, aka we just remove the one that has this ID. So let's save. Let's go back to our app. Let's refresh. Make sure we don't have any errors. We don't. So if we click delete here, now that post is gone from the front end as well. All right, cool. So before we work on the edit, I want to add a post limiter right here, an input to limit the number of posts in our page. So let's go up here in the home. So actually next to the form here, we need to put another call. Give it S3 width. And here we'll say, we'll put some text, say limit number of posts. And here we'll put an input with a type of number and the name. Sure, I don't think we need the name attribute. I just use it as it's just a habit. So here we'll say vModel we'll call this post limit, and let's create this post limit. So here in our data, let's say post limit. I'm gonna give it a default value of 5, and here let's create a method. Or actually, we need to add a button to trigger this. So here we'll say button, and we'll say add click. So once this is clicked, we need to call a method called set limit, like this. Let's give this a class of waves effect and waves light and btn, and this will say set. Don't know why that tag didn't close. All right, let's go here. Let's create this set limit. So set limit. Now we need to reach to our post service. So here we'll say post service dot. We need to use that get posts method, and we pass it the post limit. So this dot post, post limit, like this. This returns a promise. So we say dot then, and if we when we get our response, we just need to say this dot posts equals this response. So response dot data and dot catch error. We say console dot error error. All right, I think this is it. Let's save. Let's go to our app. I want to give this some margin as well. We're just going to use some inline styling for now. We'll say style equals margin 50 pixels. Let's save. There we go. So we get our limiter. Let's say I want only 2. Click set. Cool, we get only 2. I want 3. Oh, what is this? No, did I click? So we click 3, we get 3 as well. So we get the latest 3. Cool. And if we refresh, we only get all of them. And of course, if we put like a massive number, what is happening? Put a massive number, we get all of them anyway. All right, so I want to work on the edit now. So the way edit works is that when I click edit, I want here this form to be filled with the details of that post that I clicked edit, and then when we click again add, it will edit that post alone. So here we will actually pass this post down to our post form. So what we need to do, we need to add another variable here, call it editing post, and we'll give it a value of null initially. And in the edit post, where is the edit post here, we just say this dot editing post equals this post that we clicked. And now we need to pass it to our form. So here we'll say vModel, or actually just like colon, shorthand syntax, call it the same, editing post equals editing post. All right, so now we pass it to our post form as a prop. So let's go to our post form. And for us to use props in Vue, we need to actually declare a props property. And this can be an array, and you pass it the names of the props you're receiving, but preferably you put an object so that you can use typing as well to prop typing. And you'll say, so I want to receive editing post, and this will be of type object. So this is a better practice than using the strings in an array. So now that we're receiving this, what I want to do is that I want to listen to changes to this editing post. So whenever this prop changes, because by default we don't have this prop, so I want to that when we get this prop to trigger that we fill our form with the data from that post. So here we're going to use another thing. Where are we actually? What is this? So under the methods here, we use something else called watch, which watches for changes in our props. And here we can have methods which have the same name as our variables in our state. So if, for example, if I wanted to listen to changes for our editing post prop, or for the loading, for example, I would say loading and then do something. So I want to listen to changes in the editing post prop, so I'll copy that. And here in the watch, I'll paste that. And this will take the post that we got passed down, So now this is our object. Whenever that changes, the editing post, this will get triggered. So if it changes, we need to say this dot title. So we need to put our input model to be the same, the data in our inputs to be the same as that post that we're trying to edit. So we'll say this dot title equals post dot title, and this dot body equals post dot body. All right, let's save everything and let's check if that's working. So let's refresh. If we click edit on this one, cool, we get edited, but yeah, those, I don't know, the label doesn't activate once if we do this. So you see, if I click on this one, it's editing this one. If I click, it's editing this one. Actually, let's make it so that if we're in editing mode, this changes from add to update. So this button needs to have a conditional value here. So here we'll say, can we check for this, the editing? Or actually, actually here I'll add another property because we need it. Actually, underneath the body, I'll say ID, and this by default will be null, because we need the ID when we send to write post for it to know that we're actually editing a post and not creating one. And this here I'll say this dot ID equals post dot ID. All right, so now we know whenever the ID is null, that means we're in create mode. And if we have an ID, that means we've clicked edit and this has been triggered and we have an ID value right here. That means we're in editing mode. So we can use this ID property for this conditional here. So here we'll say if ID like this as a ternary operator. So if ID is not null, if it's truthy, the value of this will be update. Else the value of it will be add, like this. It's a JavaScript expression inside of string interpolation. All right, let's save and let's check if that's working. Let's reload. So now it's add, and if I click to edit this one, it says update. Cool. Of course, those labels don't go up, but whatever. All right, so now let's actually make it so that it actually updates when we send to the server. So here, so on submit, we need to say, we can actually add the ID here and say equals this dot ID, and it will still work when we're creating a post, because in the post service, if you remember here in the post service, if it checks if post.id, and it's okay if we send this ID if it's null, and if it's null, it's still gonna send it to the post. So that would work just fine. So nothing changes here. All right, so let's save and let's test this out. All right, let's say we want to edit this edited, and I just want to add a bunch of these after this. I click update. All right. Okay, so that's not. Oh, I see what's happening. So because we didn't change the logic, this is actually edited, but because our logic in the home is just adding those posts whenever we receive that. Because if we refresh, we get that post has been edited and it wasn't actually added as a new one. So what we need to do, where is it? So in the home view, where is it? Oh boy. Oh yeah, here. We need to check if we already have that post. We just edit that post. So I'm gonna cut this, and we'll say if this dot posts dot find, and we need to pass this a condition. So p or post where post.id equals post.id of this post right here. So if this is true, that means we have this post. So we need to find this post. So we need to find the index of the post and replace the element at that index. So we'll say const index equals this dot posts dot find index, and the callback or this thing is post where post.id equals post.id. And now that we have that index, we can just say this dot posts dot splice. And the way splice works is that you give it a start index, and the start index will be this index, and you give it the number of posts to remove, which was just one. We just want to remove that. And the third one will be what you wanted to replace it with. We want to replace it by this post that we got passed here. Else, that means else, if we don't have this post in that array, that means this post is a new one. So we just paste back that thing that we say this post.unshift. So let's save. Now let's reload here. And now if we add a new post, it actually adds it right here. But if we edit an existing post, let's say I want to edit this, and instead of learn Vue, I want to say learn Vue.js, we say update, it actually updates this and it doesn't add it. Cool. So our application is complete. So yeah, or actually wait, I want to format this. I want to format this because this doesn't look good. How do we do this? Yeah, let's actually add a filter. Oh, this is another feature that I forgot to mention. There's this thing called filters. What we need to do is here we can right here in here we can add a JavaScript expression to edit this, but that's not efficient because the markup would look a bit crowded. So here we'll add this pipe character. I used to call wall, but now I know it's called pipe. And this is similar to Angular pipes. And here we'll call this pipe format date. And now we need to create this filter and it will be applied to this. So here in the filters array or object, let's create this format date filter. So let's say format date, and it will take date. You can name this whatever, it's just an argument. And here we'll say, I want to change the date because right now it's just a string. I want to form a date from it. We'll say new date, and we'll pass it this date. And now this is an actual JavaScript date object. And I want to format it that it will have the day, the month, and the year. I don't want to go further because actually later on you will use something like moment or day.js, but I want to do this without any library. So we'll say day equals date dot get date, date, which will give us the number of the day. And here we'll have the month, month equals date dot get month. And here we'll have year, which will be date dot get full year, like this. And here we'll say return curly brace, backticks, day hyphen or dash month and dash year. And if you're from America, you can flip this, put the month at the beginning. This is like European format. And now it will here in this filter, it will take this and then process it with that filter and return and put in the markup this result. All right, so let's save. So for example, let's look at this one. This is the 13th of oh, it's already formatted. All right, cool. Yeah, let's make sure that that's the correct date. So we can go to our Vue, where is it? Vue right here. We can go to our data. So here in the home, in the post, actually not in the post form, in the home, we see our data, the first post right here. All right, here it's the 13th of May of 2019. Wait a second, this is, oh wait, I forgot. Month actually starts from 0 to 11 instead of 1 to 12. So let's say here +1, and that should fix it. And we save and we go back here. Yeah, there we go. So now it's actually the 13th of May of 2019 right here. Alright, so that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned from it. If you're a beginner and you're like trying to figure out which framework to learn, Vue is definitely for you. I'll put a link of the GitHub repository, including all of this code, in the description. And please let me know if you like this video and if you have any praise or criticism or whatever. And if you like this video, like it. If you love this type of content, please subscribe and hit the like button, the bell button, so you don't miss any videos from me. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.